This lesson video is going to cover section 2.3 and 2.4. And again, we're looking at the molecules of cells in this section. And more specifically, we're going to look at the chemistry of water in a little bit more detail. Organisms are composed of 70 to 90% water. Therefore, the properties of water plays a really important role in survival of just about all organisms. Water is a polar molecule, which means that it has partial charges in various places. And water molecules, they hydrogen bond to one another, which makes them cling together. Without hydrogen bonding, the properties of water would change very significantly, and it would mean that water would change from a solid to a liquid state at minus 100 degrees C instead of the 0 degrees C, which it currently does. And from a liquid to a gas, that would change at minus 91 degrees Celsius, as opposed to the plus 100 degrees Celsius, which it does because of hydrogen bonding. Water has a high heat capacity, and that means that it requires a fair amount of energy in order to raise its temperature. And it's 1 calorie is actually defined as the amount of energy required to raise 1 gram of water by 1 degrees Celsius. It also has a high heat of vaporization, and that means that it requires a lot of energy in order to turn water from a liquid to a gas. And so this then allows animals in hot environments. It provides them with an efficient way to cool their body and maintain optimum temperature. Water is a solvent, and that is largely due to its polarity. And it facilitates chemical reactions and dissolves many substances. A solution contains 1 or more dissolved solutes, such as sodium chloride. So when you're referring to a solution, then that means that you have 1 or more dissolved solutes. And then we have the terms hydrophilic and hydrophobic. And hydrophilic means that if a molecule is hydrophilic, it means that it attracts water. And if a molecule is hydrophobic, it means that it does not attract water, or it kind of repels water. Kind of like oil and water. Oil would be a hydrophobic type of a substance. Now, when ionic salts, such as sodium chloride, are put in water, the negative ends of the water molecules are attracted to the sodium ions, and the positive ends of the water molecules are attracted to the chloride ions. And again, this is because of the partial charges on the water molecule, and you can see they're shown there. So that the hydrogens, they have a partial positive charge, and then the oxygen has a partial negative charge on it. Water molecules, they are cohesive and adhesive, and water does flow freely, but the molecules cling together. So it also adheres to polar surfaces, so this makes water an excellent transport system inside and outside of organisms. Also has a high surface tension, and the force between the molecules is quite high. Another interesting thing to note is that frozen water is less dense than liquid water. So water expands slightly as it freezes, which makes it less dense. And that means that ice will float, or it will remain on the surface of a body of water and will not sink. Then we'll look at acids and bases. When water ionizes, it releases an equal number of hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions. The number is very small, however. And when you have a surplus of H plus ions in solution, then that would mean it's an acid. So if you have a surplus of hydrogen as opposed to the hydroxide ion, then that means that you have an acid solution. And some examples of this is lemon juice, vinegar, and tomatoes. And these would be substances, naturally occurring things that have a slightly acidic pH or hydrogen concentration, hydrogen ion concentration. Then we have basic solutions. Bases, they have an excess of the hydroxide ion. So they have, when you have a surplus of the hydroxide ion, then it renders your pH to be in the basic range. And an example of this would be sodium hydroxide. In this case, sodium hydroxide is a very strong base, and so that means that the dissociation of the sodium and the hydroxide ion is almost complete. Other types of bases would include baking soda and antacids, but they're generally weaker bases. So the pH scale, the pH scale indicates whether a solution is acidic or basic, and a pH of 7 is neutral, and that would be pure water. If the pH is less than 7, that would indicate an acidic solution. That means that the concentration of the hydrogen ions is greater than the hydroxide. And for a pH of greater than 7, that would be a basic solution, which means that the concentration of the hydroxide ion is greater than the concentration of the hydrogen ion. And here are some examples of different acids and bases. Bases on the right and acids are on the left of this diagram. As far as the pH scale goes, you may not know this, but the way that pH is measured, so pH, let's see if I can get my pen to write here. So pH, it's not writing too clearly at the moment. Let's just see if I can get that a little clearer here for you. So pH is measured by the negative log. Well, it's still not all that clear, of the H plus concentration. It's about as clear as I can write at the moment. So if you look at the different values here, so if you have a hydrogen ion concentration of 10 to the minus 6, the negative log of 10 to the minus 6, so negative, see if I can write a little clearer here, the negative log of 10 to the minus 6 would equal negative 6, which equals 6. And so that's how pH is determined. So you just take the hydrogen ion concentration, whatever that might be, and then you find the negative log of that value. So again, for a situation of where the hydrogen ion concentration is 10 to the minus 8, we just take the negative log of that. So the negative log of that, and that would be minus negative 8, because the log of 10 to the minus 8 is minus 8, and then you take the negative of that, and that then would equal positive 8. Okay, so that's how pH is measured. So I'll just get rid of that, and then we'll carry on here. All right, so buffers then. Buffers help keep the pH of a solution within a specific limit. And so what they do is they take up excess hydrogen ions or hydroxide ions. And so in animals, the pH of body fluids, it has to be within a very narrow range. And the pH of human blood has to be kept at around 7.4. And if it drops even down to 7 or increases to 7.8, then serious situations will arise within that person. Okay, so those are the things that we've covered so far. Then now we'll look at briefly at organic molecules. So Non-living matter consists of inorganic molecules. However, many inorganic substances such as water and salts are also essential to organisms. And the molecules of life are organic molecules. Organic molecules, they contain carbon and hydrogen atoms. At least that comprises the backbone of most of the molecules. Here are some different examples of different molecules. Organic molecules, that is, and you can see we will be looking at each of these in a little bit more detail. But note that each one of these, the R represents the carbon chain, whatever that might be in each case, and then attached to the carbon chains you have these different functional groups. So you have hydroxyl, carbonyl, carboxyl, amino, sulfhydryl, and phosphate groups. Then we have monomers and polymers, and many molecules of life are macromolecules, which consist of smaller molecules that are joined together. Monomers are just simple organic molecules that can exist on their own or be linked with other monomers to form a polymer, and there are some examples of that. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, they're often found in polymers. And monomers, some examples of those would be monosaccharides, fatty acids, a single amino acid, and nucleotides. Now, don't worry about each of these. We will be looking at them in further detail yet. So then we have the process of the synthesis and degradation of polymers. So monomers are often joined together to form a polymer by what's referred to as a dehydration reaction. And so this is where you have a hydroxyl functional group on one monomer and a hydrogen atom on another monomer, which you can see right here. I'll just circle that for you. So right here, so the hydroxyl on one and the hydrogen on another, those combine to form H2O, and then the two monomers join together to form a polymer. So then to degrade polymers, in other words, to break up polymers into monomers, then we have what's called a hydrolysis reaction. So then when the polymer breaks apart, you need to replace once again replace the hydroxyl group and the hydrogen. I'll just circle that again. So right here, once again, same sort of thing. So you need to add H2O to that particular reaction in order to restore a polymer back into its monomers. So those are some examples of a couple of different reactions, and we will be looking at the functional groups and further reactions in greater detail in subsequent lessons.